Why did you tell us that they were the Gestapo?
We deserve a governor who stands up for law-abiding New Yorkers, doesn't put illegals first, but actually puts New Yorkers first.
The answer is no. I'll answer for you. You do violate the law.
So-called protests that are turning into violent riots.
The sanctuary governors get grilled on the Hill. That's the topic of today's episode of No Border, No Country. I'm joined today by Project 21 Ambassador and former Attorney General of the great state of Indiana, Curtis Hill. Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So, immigration continues to be a dominant issue in our political landscape, and these sanctuary governors were called in recently to explain these policies they have. Banking on your time as Attorney General, what's your experience with these sanctuary laws, and are they as destructive as the critics say they are?
Well, they absolutely are. You know, the idea of having a safe haven for anything illegal should be problematic to most of us. We are a nation of laws, and despite how we may feel about a particular subject, we do need to follow the rule of law. And so the idea of not agreeing with a law and then creating an environment wherein it's okay to disregard the law is something that we should be concerned about, the ramifications of which. And we're seeing those ramifications spreading out in so-called protests that are turning into violent riots, and issues becoming, who do we believe? Are we, is this a lawful protest? Is this an out of control riot? And that's what we're able to see in real time on a daily basis.
Okay, let's look at one of these clips. This is Congressman Pete Stauber from Minnesota talking to Governor Tim Walz from Minnesota, the former Democratic nominee for president not that long ago. So here's how that went.
Al-Shabaab terrorists who entered our country illegally arrested in Minneapolis last year? Yes, there was. Were there 3 illegal child predators arrested by ICE in St. Paul earlier this year?
I certainly hope so. That's their job.
Yes, there was. Are the officers who arrested the Al-Shabaab terrorists or the child predators, are they Nazis or the Gestapo?
The tactics of wearing
They're
masks.
not.
The tactics of wearing masks.
Why did you tell us that they were the Gestapo? Do you believe that any of the violent illegal immigrants I have mentioned have a right to be in this country?
I don't know what their immigration status was.
They're illegal, violent criminals that the ICE took off the streets of Minneapolis.
So, Curtis, I detect a serious amount of disingenuousness from Tim Walz there. He says, well, I hope so. That's the federal agent's job. But isn't it true that sanctuary jurisdictions make it harder for those federal agents to do their jobs?
Well, it certainly does. I mean, it is the responsibility of the federal government to address immigration. It's entirely a federal issue. But these folks come across the country, come into our country, and then they go anywhere they want because we don't have borders inside the United States. So if you come, once you cross into Texas or cross into Arizona, if you make your way to Illinois or you make your way to New York or you make your way to Minnesota or any number of states, California included, that have relaxed their provisions, then illegals can feel safe to run amok. And these governors like Walz are disingenuous because they claim, if you looked at his opening statement in those hearings, they claim that they're not sanctuary states. They claim that they support the federal government and the immigration policies, and yet they do the exact opposite and send every signal that's possible to demonstrate that they support illegals being in their community. More importantly, that they don't support law enforcement efforts to root them out.
What do you make of his claim? He was trying to get it out there about, well, these agents are wearing masks when they're conducting these operations. It's been said pretty clearly why they wear those masks, but why are people like Walz clinging to this defense that, oh, they're like, Gestapo, secret police or whatever? I mean, what do you make of that?
They're trying to make the federal government out to be the bad guys. They're trying to develop sympathies and empathies for the illegals, and again, trying to control the narrative. Certainly, if you have federal officers who work undercover operations, you don't want them to expose themselves in situations of that nature. That's long-standing law enforcement practicalities. But the idea of the left is to create this environment that the United States government, particularly under Donald Trump, has become, and everybody likes to use the Nazi example, that it's an assault on democracy, assault on freedom, when it's the exact opposite is true. American freedom is about being able to maintain your country and to maintain your standards and maintain your laws. And we're simply attempting to make sure that the right people are able to come in under the right protections for American liberty.
So the next clip we were going to listen to was Elise Stefanik from New York talking to the governor of her state, Kathy Hochul. And here's how that went.
Raymond Rojas Basilio. Do you know who that is?
I'm going to tell you our overall policy, which will address all this.
I'll tell you who that is. He is an illegal who an 11-year-old in our state because, again, of your sanctuary state policies. This illegal was shielded from federal immigration enforcement and able to commit this heinous crime. And what about Wilson Castillo Diaz? Do you know who that
I am
is?
telling you this. We do cooperate fully with ICE in criminal prosecution. Our sanctuary
You're not advocating for
regulations
these victims.
only deal
This
with
is a
civil
5-year-old who
enforcement.
was raped
Civil
on Long
enforcement.
Island in Nassau County. You are not advocating on behalf of these victims. You are shielding illegals. Even in your opening statement,
That is
you
not true.
prioritize putting illegals first.
That is not
Rapes
true.
of young girls, beatings of NYPD cops by illegals who are here under Kathy Hochul's failed policies, burning New Yorkers alive. This is Kathy Hochul's New York. It's one of the many reasons why you're hemorrhaging support from hardworking New York
These are
families.
horrific crimes, and they're heartbreaking.
They're horrific crimes that are committed on your watch. You signed this executive order on your first day in office. You signed it again and again this January. We deserve a governor who stands up for law-abiding New Yorkers, doesn't put illegals first, but actually puts New Yorkers first. I appreciate
Rather than
the
going
chairman's-
after the viral moment, I suggest you
No.
look at the facts.
I'm standing up for New Yorkers.
No.
Rather than addressing the illegals in New York, you are prioritizing your far-left sanctuary state policies, which you put in place with executive orders. Instead of
We
advocating for
cooperate
victims,
in
a
all those
5-year-old
cases.
who
We
was
cooperate with ICE.
you did not. They were
We
released because
cooperate
of
with
sanctuary
ICE.
state
We
policies in New
cooperate
York
with
State.
law
No
enforcement.
amount of words is going to clean up your failed record and these horrific crimes committed in sanctuary state that you created. And with that, I
Your
yield back.
representation, the facts.
These governors, they seem to say the requisite words. They say, oh, it's terrible, and I feel for these victims. But isn't there a certain callousness to the way they, in practice, in their actions and words, or their actions, they disregard the suffering that their policies cause, and they seem more focused on the plight, as it were, of the people who are committing these atrocities?
Well, the Congresswoman makes a very good point. The federal government is targeting illegals who are engaging in reprehensible behavior, rapes, molestations, murders, things of that nature. I mean, we have millions and millions of people that are here illegally, and we don't have the resources to go after all of them. The low-hanging fruit would be the decent family that's here illegally and not committing crimes. Our federal government is not targeting those folks at this point. They may get caught up in it, but they're targeting the people who are committing atrocities that the Congresswoman was laying out there. And that's an important aspect of this, because the idea is to root out these people who are committing heinous crimes, heinous offenses. They should not be here. If they had not been here, these crimes would not have been committed. And so when you have governors that are turning a blind eye to the atrocities and simply saying they're sticking up for the rights of illegals to come into the country and to flourish, they are completely disregarding the violent activities that are occurring as a result.
How can sanctuary governors like Hochul say, like she said in that clip, well, we cooperate with ICE, we cooperate, when there's example after example after example of dangerous criminal aliens who were released and the local law enforcement disregarded detainer requests from ICE?
Well, she can say that because she doesn't care who's listening. I mean, if her people continue to vote for her, regardless of what she actually does and based on what she says, she can say whatever she wants. And that's typically what happens. You know, we are in a system now where elected officials are able to just spew anything they want. They get protected by the mainstream media, and the public really doesn't have a clue of what's going on. It's sort of a master class in how to sidestep an issue. So yes, she sits there and says that she's cooperating with the federal government when, as the congresswoman pointed out in her questioning, she has executed executive orders that provide protections to the very people that she's claiming to be cooperative on.
Another thing we've heard these sanctuary governors and mayors say is that, well, anyone who commits a crime like that should be face the law and go to prison or get deported. But we've had angel moms on here who have lost family members who talked about this, where they say, yeah, now you're law and order after the crime's been committed and a life has been lost, but wasn't the time to be law and order with letting these people into your jurisdiction in the first place? Because you can't bring back a victim of a crime like that. They're gone forever. And then you can say, well, we convicted them. Well, the damage is done already.
Well, the damage is absolutely done. And I know that I'm a former prosecutor myself, and people used to say, well, now that they've done this crime, just go ahead and deport them. And we'd say, well, no, wait a second. We didn't want them here in the first place, but we're not going to deport them now. Now they're going to stay here and face American justice. And so it's important that when someone does commit a or commits a molestation or commits a rape in this country, that person pays that price in American justice and followed by a deportation afterwards if there's anything afterwards left. But that's a part of the whole hypocrisy that exists in these so-called sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. They're suggesting that they're about democracy. They're suggesting that they're about freedom, and what they're doing is fostering opportunities for bad things to happen. It's very difficult to locate someone and deport them when they haven't when they're not on the radar screen. When someone has committed a crime and they're hiding in these communities, not just these illegal communities, but then they're hiding and taking advantage of the overriding community's protection. That makes it doubly difficult for law enforcement to be able to react and respond and hold these people to justice.
Okay, so the last clip we're going to look at, this is Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona, and he's talking about the fact that sanctuary laws are in direct violation of federal law.
Let's just cover the last 18 seconds. When you guys say, you say we do give these people information only on a criminal warrant. Is there any distinction in 8 U.S.C. 1373A, 1324, 1324C that says, yeah, you don't have to give information, you don't have to provide the body, you don't have to respond to the ICE detainer? Is there anything in there that says there's a distinction between the criminal law, the criminal warrant, the criminal detainer, and a civil warrant, civil detainer? Is there anything in there? The answer is no. I'll answer for you. You do violate the law. You are sanctuary cities. And every one of you sitting there, if you don't know that by now, you should know it walking out of here, that you are actually committing a federal crime every time someone does that. Because you don't have the authority under federal law or under the Constitution to negate even a civil warrant for someone who's violated a federal offense when you get a detainer notice. Yield back.
Is he right?
Well, I think governors and state representatives need to recognize the federal authority. When the federal government has a warrant, an outstanding warrant for someone for a federal crime, for illegal status, the states are expected to cooperate. Now, that doesn't mean that the state is required to initiate investigations, to take enforcement actions. It's not the state's responsibility to enforce immigration law. But it is the state's responsibility to cooperate and to assist the federal government when a properly applied warrant is in place.
One of the things we've heard the sanctuary mayors and governors say, and it happened in this testimony as well, they say, we cooperate with the federal authorities. We will turn over any suspect when ICE provides a criminal warrant. But isn't that kind of a fig leaf? It's not. It's a little disingenuous again.
It is disingenuous because what they should be doing is anytime that a state official, a state or local official, has reason to believe that someone is in this country illegally, they should be making a contact to the federal government and turning that situation over to federal authorities. That circumstance can happen under a number of ways. It doesn't only have to happen under an official investigation, But if someone is able to determine that this person may be in the country illegally, it's their responsibility to take action, to communicate that information to the ICE officials, for them to take action or not, as the federal government chooses.
What about the fact that immigration seems to have this exclusive status in the law with some people that it can be violated? The laws of it can be violated, and these sanctuary jurisdictions pop up when people have used the example, if we said, well, this is a Second Amendment sanctuary state where the gun laws don't apply, or this is a reproductive rights state where the federal laws don't apply, the same people who defend the sanctuary laws would be going crazy.
They would be going crazy. I mean, it's a I don't know if it's a semantics issue. It's again trying to develop an empathy for the illegals, to give them a higher status, and getting away from the idea that we in this country have the right and responsibility to protect our borders. I mean, our immigration policies, everybody knows our policies are broken. I think all the governors referenced that during the hearing. And the bottom line is we don't have an effective strategy to allow people into the country legally. That's one of the problems we have. But we can't address any issues whatsoever, and couldn't address any of these issues during the Biden administration because the border was wide open. The very first step in immigration policy is you have to secure the border. You have to close the front door. If you don't close the front door, you create this incentive for all sorts of people to come in because there's no repercussions. And once you get in, we've overwhelmed the system. And so what we're dealing with now is, under President Trump, we have effectively closed the border, which is step number one. Now, the next process is then recognizing what is our quantified problem. How many illegals do we have in this country, and how do we categorize them? We've got a very large section of individuals who are here illegally who are not causing particular problems. So we want to set them aside for a second. Now we have a large portion, maybe not as large, but a large portion of persons that are here illegally who are creating problems. They're breaking the law. They're creating criminal violations. We put them in a category, and then we place our limited resources and target those people. That's exactly what we're doing in this process right now, dealing with getting those people rooted out. And then the next step in the process, it should be an overriding step in the process, is creating a policy, creating a standard in which the bureaucracy gets out of the way and allows us to process legal immigration in a manner in which we can welcome people into this country as we've been known to do, and not confuse the issue. We don't want to confuse the issue of welcoming immigrants as welcoming illegal immigrants. We want to welcome legal immigration, those who come here under the right processes that we have in place, but we have to fix those processes so that they become efficient and not create incentive for someone to go around the system and get here illegally because there's no way to get here legally in the first place.
Another issue that we deal with here at Early a lot is birthright citizenship. And you are here today as an ambassador for Project 21. For people that don't know, that's a group of African Americans who are promoting a better America for African Americans as well as all Americans. Could you talk a little bit about the origins of birthright citizenship, who that was intended for, and whether or not it's being misappropriated to people it was never meant for?
Sure, it's a great question. Birthright citizenship, and a lot of people miss this, was a product of the Civil War, slavery, and I believe the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. We needed to have a constitutional fix to end slavery, to create citizenship for the black slave, and a process for voting. And the best way to do that was to enact an amendment to the Constitution that provided citizenship to anyone who was born on this soil. Because prior to that, blacks were considered, whether they weren't people, Americans, there was no citizenship, there was no right to vote. That fixed all that process. So the birthright citizenship standard had nothing to do with immigration. It had everything to do with fixing the problem of having black slaves that were categorized as less than human, less than American, less than citizen, and fixing all that. So going forward, what happened was that people interpreted birthright citizenship as they saw fit. And so now we're at a point where we're actually examining what's the purpose of birthright citizenship. What does it mean? Was it intended for someone to come into this country illegally or to be here illegally or even visiting to have a child on American soil and that child be afforded American citizenship. Was that the intention? Well, absolutely not. Although that's what it sort of morphed into existence. And so I think it's appropriate for us to look at birthright citizenship for what it was and what it ought to be, as opposed to having it as an automatic standard for anybody who happens to be on U.S. soil to be possessed with the great blessing of liberty, American liberty, simply because they were on vacation and they had a child here, or they crossed the border here illegally and therefore had a child, and that child is a citizen. That's a question that we need to address and have a once and done answer as soon as possible.
Also, what do you think of these district level judges making these injunctions against the Trump administration? Do you think these judges should be able to block an entire presidential administration the way they're doing to Trump?
No, I've written extensively about that. I think that a single federal judge issuing a nationwide blanket injunction against an executive authority is a very dangerous constitutional crisis brewing. It's been increasing. The numbers have just gone through the roof in terms of the number of federal judges that are doing it. It's become a political process. It's become a way of blocking politically the executive authority of the president. I'm hoping that the Supreme Court missed an opportunity to address it directly, but it really needs to be addressed so that we have a proper balance and authority. We cannot have a judicial branch of government, particularly a judicial branch represented by a singular federal judge, having the authority and the ability to cut off the political power and authority of the executive branch of government, which is exactly what's happening with these decisions that are being made by the federal judges.
Before we came on, I read an op-ed you wrote recently about the LA riots. It's on the Federalist, and I would encourage everyone to check it out. Where else can people read your work?
CurtisHill.com. We've got a nice page with several of our pieces on there, and that's probably the best way to identify information that I put out there.
Okay, Curtis Hill, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your expertise. We'd love to have you back on sometime, so please come again.
Great, anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the podcast. If you liked what you heard, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, and you can also hear this podcast on any of the other places where you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about the Immigration Reform Law Institute, go to irli.org. Thanks a lot.